Do you know if these friends that you talked to have also been interviewed by the police?
So I did speak with somebody who said that they have not personally been interviewed by police, but they believe that it's absolutely possible that other people in that group could have been interviewed by police. I'm sure police are trying to make sure that there's no stone unturned, and they are combing through everything to try to piece together this just horrific case.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
David's neighbor just broke his silence, and what he revealed could flip this whole case upside down. His words don't just poke holes in David's story, they shred it apart. The quiet investigation into Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death took a dark new twist when someone who lived right next door to David finally spoke up. And this isn't some random person. This is a neighbor who's been watching everything unfold from just a few feet away. According to him, David's team has been pushing one version of events. But what he saw with his own eyes tells something completely different. This unnamed witness, who lived right by David's Hollywood Hills rental since early 2024, claims he constantly saw Celeste coming and going, not just visiting, but straight up living there. He swore it looked exactly like a couple shacking up together, young, in love, and sharing a life behind closed doors. They were pretty quiet, he told The Sun in his exclusive September 25th interview, adding that nothing ever gave off party vibes or chaos. No cops pulling up, no wild drama, just what seemed like a normal relationship. But here's the chilling detail. This so-called normal couple routine was happening while Celeste was already listed as a missing person for more than a year. The neighbor insists the last time he spotted them together was around July 2025, months into her disappearance being on official record. That means if his story holds weight, David wasn't just hiding a secret romance, he was living under the same roof with a girl the world believed had vanished. This testimony changes everything, because if true, it shows David knew exactly where Celeste was the entire time while everyone else was searching for her. This changes everything. While cops and Celeste's family were tearing the city apart searching for her, she might have been living right out in the open in one of LA's richest neighborhoods. The neighbor admitted he was floored when he finally learned Celeste's real age and her tragic end. He thought they were just two young adults, maybe 18 or 19, doing their own thing. That assumption either shows how convincingly Celeste could pass as older, or how carefully David kept outsiders at a distance. The neighbor explained that David always came off polite, but never chatty, never inviting conversation, never letting anyone get too close. The couple kept such a low profile that no one around them thought to question their situation. But the most disturbing part of this testimony isn't about what the neighbor didn't notice, it's about what he couldn't ignore. Right outside that Hollywood Hills home sat David's Tesla, the very same car where Celeste's remains would later be found. The neighbor recalled the vehicle being visibly smashed at the back, looking like it had been in a bad accident. Curious, he once asked David about it, but David brushed him off with no real explanation, acting like he didn't care and refusing to fix it. That strange indifference now feels ice cold in hindsight. The Tesla sat there for weeks, bashed in, drawing side eyes from people passing by. According to the neighbor, it was parked in that condition since late August 2025. Nobody thought much of it until September 5th, when the car was finally towed. And just 3 days later, on September 8th, tow yard workers made the horrifying discovery: the smell of human decomposition leaking from the trunk. The timeline is damning. Investigators now see the car not just as a piece of evidence, but as a symbol of David's bizarre behavior, leaving a wrecked Tesla sitting in plain sight while hiding a devastating secret inside. The neighbor said the Tesla looked wrecked, but insisted there was nothing unusual about it. No foul smell, no sign of what was really hidden inside. Cops even ticketed the car twice, once on August 27th and again on September 3rd, before finally towing it away on September 5th. Experts now believe the Tesla's airtight design trapped everything inside, which could explain why nobody on the street picked up on the horror parked right in front of them. Once this neighbor's account hit the press, the internet exploded. Some people are calling it the biggest witness evidence yet. Proof that Celeste wasn't just some visitor, but actually living there with David. Others see it as confirmation that she was presented to neighbors like a girlfriend, raising brutal questions about who in David's circle looked the other way, pretending not to notice the truth about her age. This is huge because it completely shatters the story David's team has been pushing, that his contact with Celeste was limited and casual. Instead, it paints a picture of a full-blown domestic setup, one that crosses the line into something flat-out illegal considering her age. And this isn't just some random bystander. This was the man living right next door, with no reason to lie, no clout to chase, just reporting what he saw. On September 18, 2025, police executed a search warrant at David's Hollywood Hills rental. But strangely, no arrest followed, leaving investigators piecing together timelines and evidence in silence. That delay only fuels more theories, that this case might go way deeper than just David, and that other adults in his orbit may have known exactly who Celeste was and still chose to keep quiet. The neighbors' revelations aren't just testimony anymore. They're a spark, setting off suspicions of a cover-up and whispers that powerful people could have been protecting David from the start. The neighbors' testimony didn't just fade into the background, it lit up every corner of social media. People are furious, asking how no one thought to call the cops when Celeste had been publicly listed as missing. Her photo was out there, her case had already drawn attention, yet she was allegedly living in plain sight with David. This wasn't speculation from fans online anymore. This was firsthand, day-to-day observations from someone right next door, turning whispers into concrete evidence. But the storm didn't stop there. As investigators kept digging and the public heat grew unbearable, another piece of the puzzle surfaced, this time from inside David's own camp. Friends and associates who had been around him and Celeste started stepping forward, but their version of events sounded a lot like damage control. Their coordinated defense popped up almost overnight, hitting headlines on September 25th and 26th, 2025. Their story? They insist they had no clue about Celeste's real age. They say they believe she was 19, a college-aged girlfriend who fit right into David's world. According to them, she carried herself older, dressed older, and even flashed what they claim were fake IDs. That's their shield, ignorance. But fans and critics online aren't buying it. With so much evidence stacking up, people are questioning how a whole group of grown adults with access, money, and influence could all be fooled so easily. The defense coming from David's circle doesn't read like truth to many. It reads like a script, rehearsed and rolled out just in time to soften the blow. And now the public wants answers. Were his friends really blind to what was happening? Or were they complicit in keeping a dangerous secret? This new defense wasn't whispered in back alleys. It hit the mainstream full force through TMZ exclusives and even made its way onto News Nation's Banfield.
Of David, how did they know him and how well did they know him?
Yeah, so the folks that I spoke to are in the LA music scene, so they know David very, very well. They didn't know Celeste as well as they knew David, but they did notice that he was bringing her along when they would go to parties in the music scene. Maybe they would have hangouts after a recording session. And they knew David to be a very gentle person, is what they told me. They also described him as very soft-spoken. Friends around him are extremely shocked that he's even remotely connected to this grisly murder of a 14-year-old girl. Obviously, he has not been named a person of interest, and from what we've seen, there is no legitimate connection connecting him to the death of this young girl. However, her remains were found in his car, and just that connection alone has really shocked a lot of people around him.
Suddenly, the world got a front row seat to how David's own friends are scrambling to protect themselves, spinning a narrative that paints them as clueless bystanders to what now looks like a long-term illegal relationship. According to their version, Celeste wasn't some hidden secret. She was fully blended into David's world, moving around his social and professional life like she belonged there.
Did they get the impression that this was a romantic couple?
Yes, absolutely. So the people that I spoke to that were seeing them together out in the scene believed they were romantically involved. Now, look, they did not say anything about PDA, said that David was a very shy, quiet person, and Celeste seemed to mirror that as well. So they weren't out there making out at parties and things like that, but they did believe, because they would see them together so frequently, that these two were in a relationship.
His friends swear they only ever saw them as a couple, young, in love, and nothing out of the ordinary. The backbone of their defense, They claim they truly believe Celeste was 19, thanks to her presentation and those alleged fake IDs she flashed whenever necessary.
Where did they get the idea that she was somehow a 19-year-old going to USC as a college
I know. Isn't that just so crazy? Because, you know, we think, how does a 14-year-old child, present as a 19-year-old woman? And I was told that these people were just so sure that she was a college student. They were specific. They said that she attended USC from what they believed. And also she was seen at events where there's age restrictions, you know, clubs and parties and stuff like this, where she had to be at least of 18 years old to get in. And we do know from law enforcement sources that she did have several fake IDs as well. So she was able to get into places where there was age restrictions.
On the surface, this excuse sounds convenient, but once you pull back the curtain, it gets messy fast. These weren't random strangers bumping into her at a bar. These were friends who spent real time around David and Celeste, often in spaces where someone's real age eventually comes out. The fact that no one ever questioned it raises eyebrows everywhere. Fox LA later confirmed reports that David's friends openly described Celeste as his girlfriend, doubling down on their claim that the IDs fooled them all. But here's where it unravels: the timeline. If they had known her for months, maybe even years, how did every single one of them stay blind to the truth? The picture that emerges isn't one of innocence, but of isolation. A girl cut off, surrounded by David's circle, and locked in a reality where the lie was easier to believe than the truth. The Times of India dropped even more disturbing details, reporting that David's own friends claimed they saw Celeste at parties and assumed she was just his girlfriend, part of a normal relationship. But the public isn't buying that for a second. Online, people are tearing this defense apart, calling it flat out impossible for grown adults to miss the truth for so long. The backlash only got louder when whispers of old Discord chats from 2022 resurfaced. Messages allegedly linked to Celeste when she was just 11 years old.
You know, Charlie, it's so sad to hear that you and I are talking about a 14-year-old girl, but I keep going back to the fact that it's possible he connected with her as early as 12, and on the far end, maybe even 11. Did these friends have a long relationship with David? Like, for instance, did they know Celeste when she was maybe 13 or, God forbid, even 12?
Yeah, so the people that I spoke with just recently got to know him. You know, he has been popular for quite some time. We know that he had been signed to a record label when he was underage. However, he has kind of blown up in the music scene the past couple years. So it would have been the past couple years that they did know her. But yeah, she would have been, what, about 12 years old during the time that she was coming around. And, you know, we don't know a whole lot about who her friends were, if she did have friends. We just know that she was coming around more in his circle. And we know she wasn't really home very often because she wasn't attending school.
Well, God, if you think about it, you know, her friends would have been elementary school friends, because it's only a couple years ago that she would have been in elementary school. And if she disappeared at 13, she would have been just into middle school. And just the whole idea that we're talking about it is so uncomfortable.
Critics are asking the obvious question: if conversations and receipts point to her being that young, how could David's circle pretend they didn't know? Social media users are blasting their excuses as nothing more than a shield to dodge accountability. The timeline makes this even harder to swallow. Reports now suggest Celeste may have been only 14 when the relationship started, which shatters the "we thought she was 19" narrative. That kind of age gap doesn't just raise eyebrows, it makes the whole situation look like a years-long setup. The Times of India even described the friend group's claims as extremely disturbing, warning that their version of events feels less like truth and more like coordinated spin. And here's where it gets darker. The idea that this wasn't just some fling gone wrong, but a carefully controlled dynamic that stretched back years. Every new piece of evidence points to a chilling pattern of grooming, not a mistake. What's really haunting the public isn't just one shocking revelation, but the weight of the entire timeline. A story that allegedly began when Celeste was still in elementary school and ended with her death while still in high school. It's that buildup, the years of silence, the look the other way attitude, the circle that claims ignorance, that makes this case feel less like tragedy and more like an orchestrated cover-up that finally collapsed in the worst way possible. As investigators and online sleuths keep digging through digital trails, Discord chats, old photos, and social media posts, a chilling pattern has come into focus. The allegations suggest this so-called relationship between David and Celeste began way earlier than anyone first believed. Evidence now points to 2022, when Celeste was only 11 or 12 years old. That timeline is shocking because it means David was already 17 while Celeste was still in elementary school. From the start, the power dynamic was deeply uneven, and as the years went on, that imbalance only grew worse. Resurfaced Discord logs, photos showing them together, and carefully pieced timelines built from Celeste's own activity online all paint the same disturbing picture. One of the most haunting details? Investigators confirmed that David and Celeste had matching tattoos etched onto their fingers. Those tattoos later became a key factor in identifying her remains, while also exposing the level of intimacy they shared. Intimacy that stretched far beyond any claim of casual friendship. Experts in exploitation cases say the entire progression matches a textbook pattern of grooming: early online contact, hidden manipulation, and gradual escalation into control. Reports suggest this all began inside David's own Discord server, where Celeste's profile falsely displayed her as 18 plus. That detail shows how her age was being misrepresented right inside spaces David was linked to. By 2023, when Celeste was just 13 and David had turned 18, multiple witnesses were already describing them as openly acting like a couple. That's where the law draws a hard line. Under California statutes, any romantic or sexual relationship with someone that young is statutory rape. No exceptions, no excuses, no claims of consent. And now, as her family fills in missing pieces of the timeline, the case against David is looking less like a tragic mistake and more like years of calculated grooming that ended in heartbreak. Celeste's mother delivered a gut-wrenching revelation to the press, confirming that her daughter had admitted to dating someone named David shortly before she vanished in April 2024 at just 14 years old. The family never met him, never knew who he really was, but that small confession now casts a dark shadow. It suggests the relationship had already been going on in secret long before Celeste's disappearance, only surfacing to her loved ones in those final months. Witness accounts make the picture even darker. Reports say Celeste had a history of running away from home even at 13, with one goal: to be with David. Teachers flagged her for truancy. Her time at home grew shorter, and her world seemed to be shrinking to revolve around him. Experts point out that this isn't just rebellious teen behavior. It mirrors the textbook isolation phase of grooming, where victims are slowly pulled away from family, school, and friends until the abuser becomes their entire reality. The digital trail backs it up. Screenshots, posts, and private chats don't just hint at contact. They show the evolution of something that looked disturbingly coordinated. And then came the viral images that lit up the internet. Photos of David and Celeste wearing matching Hello Kitty-themed outfits. For investigators, these weren't harmless couple selfies. They scream deliberate coordination, a kind of bonded intimacy that makes it impossible to dismiss the seriousness of their connection. The more the evidence piles up, the harder it is to argue this was anything but deliberate. A secret relationship hiding in plain sight, years in the making, masked by manipulation and ending in tragedy. Old tweets from David have resurfaced, and they're sending chills through fans and investigators alike. Some of the posts allegedly referenced Celeste during his late-night songwriting sessions, hinting she wasn't just around him personally, but woven right into his creative process. It paints a picture of a girl not just in his private life, but tangled into his professional world too. The timeline of her digital trail adds another eerie layer. Reports confirm that Celeste's last Discord activity was in January 2024, 3 months before she officially disappeared. That sudden silence raises red flags. Did she purposely cut off her online presence, or was the communication shifted to more secretive platforms that left almost no trace? Either way, the digital blackout points to a tightening grip on her, right before she vanished. When you map out her age across this alleged relationship, the scope of the violations becomes undeniable. She was barely 12 when chats began. By 13, people say she was already dating David. At 14, she disappeared. And by the time of her death at 15, she was still legally a child. Under California law, with the age of consent set at 18, any sexual contact during that entire timeline counts as statutory rape under Penal Code 261.5. But it doesn't stop with David. The longer this timeline stretches, the louder the questions get about the adults in his circle. How many knew her real age? How many looked the other way while she was integrated into his orbit?
Did these friends of David ever mention that Celeste talked about her family or her home life or let on anything about her personal life?
Yeah, so the people that I spoke with didn't know much about her. It doesn't seem like this really came up, at least in like a social gathering or a social scene. No one really questioned much about her background. Like I mentioned, you know, they just knew her as this college student that went to USC. It doesn't look like they really unpacked that. You kind of just take somebody at their word when they say things like that.
Did you get the impression that they thought David might actually be involved in this extraordinarily mysterious and tragic death?
So when I spoke to people around him, they were shocked that he was even remotely in, you know, just the same sentence of this grisly, gruesome murder. Just the fact that it was his car that her remains were found in, they were shocked because, you know, they said he appeared to be a very gentle guy, very shy guy, quiet. I also was told that his family is very conservative. They were very much involved in his life. Remember, he's just a 20-year-old, and his family was very much a part of his career from the beginning. And so for him to even be connected in any kind of way, again, he is not a person of interest, but for it just to be his car, they thought was just extremely disturbing and confusing. And just how could anybody do this, especially somebody that they would see at social scenes and things like that? They just can't believe it. It's extremely shocking for them.
Experts say the evidence shows classic grooming, a powerful entertainer using influence and access to trap a young fan in an escalating cycle of control. And then comes the final chilling detail. By the time her body was discovered, investigators determined she had been gone for weeks, possibly since late August 2025, right in the middle of LA's brutal summer heat. That's the same period when neighbors first noticed David's Tesla sitting wrecked and abandoned outside his rental. The overlap is impossible to ignore, and it suggests the car and her death may be connected in ways that investigators are only beginning to unravel. The Tesla itself has become one of the most haunting pieces of evidence. Neighbors say it sat parked in the Hollywood Hills for weeks, banged up and abandoned before finally being towed. Investigators now believe its airtight design may have trapped the smell long enough to delay the horrific discovery, explaining how a body could stay hidden in plain sight without immediate suspicion. That delay makes the entire timeline even more chilling. But the legal implications go far beyond a possible homicide. With Celeste being underage throughout the entire timeline, prosecutors could bring a flood of additional charges: lewd acts with a minor, child endangerment, even sex trafficking. If evidence proves David ever transported her across state lines for illegal purposes, the fallout wouldn't just mean prison time. It could brand him as a registered sex offender for life. And the internet isn't waiting for a court date. The timeline revelations triggered instant outrage, with hashtags blasting David for grooming and covering up murder. Leaked receipts and resurfaced photos only fueled the fire, making the age gap impossible to defend. For many, this isn't just a tragic story. It's proof of years of predatory behavior finally coming to light. The professional damage was immediate. Brands that once proudly partnered with him cut ties overnight. Crocs, Hollister, and other companies yanked campaigns, scrubbed his face from their platforms, and rushed to announce they wanted no connection to someone accused of exploiting a minor. In today's culture, association alone is enough to sink a career, and David's downfall is unfolding in real time. The Tesla may have been the smoking gun, but it's the timeline and the proof of Celeste's age that's destroying everything David built. David's career is crumbling in real time. His tour already took a major hit with the sudden cancellation of his September 17th Seattle concert just days after Celeste was officially identified. Fans who bought tickets for future shows are now in limbo, with venues and promoters quietly reconsidering whether they want his name on their stages. Even his streaming empire isn't safe. Within 24 hours of the timeline revelations going public, his breakout hit Romantic Homicide dropped 15% in plays, proving the scandal is driving listeners away. But this isn't just about one artist's downfall, it's sparking a bigger conversation. The case has put a spotlight on how underage fans can get pulled into dangerous relationships with celebrities through online spaces. Discord servers, TikTok DMs, and private chats are now under fire, with experts demanding stricter verification systems and tighter monitoring. Critics are asking how many other David and Celeste situations are out there hiding in plain sight. As of September 26, 2025, no charges have been officially filed against David, not for the alleged relationship and not for Celeste's death.
If I were a betting man, Charlie, I'd say he would be going to his support system, which, as you just mentioned, he's got a supportive family. I think they're in Houston. Does anybody know if that's a possibility? Any sightings, any hint, anything about Houston?
There hasn't been any sightings, and like you mentioned, he is from Texas originally, and we do know that he has a couple homes out there as well, which it does not appear that there have been any search warrants for either one of those homes. There haven't been any sightings, so it appears he's in hiding. I'd imagine, like I mentioned, he is not a person of interest. Maybe, if he has no connection to this grisly murder whatsoever, he obviously knew who this young girl was. I imagine that would be extremely hard and painful to hear what unfolded to somebody you know. But and it's unclear if he's spoken to police, but hopefully they get to the bottom of it soon.
But investigators are reportedly combing through mountains of digital evidence, with the homicide probe taking a much sharper focus after the timeline was exposed. The silence from authorities doesn't erase the damage. If anything, it's making the public demand louder. The story that's emerged is almost too disturbing to process. A relationship that allegedly began when Celeste was still a child, stretched across her teenage years, and ended in her tragic death. It's not just about David anymore. It's about how a vulnerable girl slipped through every crack in the system and how the culture around celebrity made it possible. For prosecutors, the timeline could become the nail in the coffin. For the rest of us, it's a wake-up call about how easily kids can be exploited in the digital age and how slow the industry has been to protect them. This case has become more than a celebrity scandal. It's a brutal reminder of how easily vulnerable kids can slip straight through the cracks of the systems meant to protect them. What started as shocking headlines about a body found in a star's Tesla has spiraled into a dark, layered story, one filled with allegations of grooming, statutory crimes, and a devastating failure to safeguard a teenager who had been missing for over a year, yet allegedly living right out in the open. The pieces don't just raise eyebrows, they expose how badly the adults around Celeste failed her. The neighbor's testimony shows she was visible to outsiders. The friend's defensive claims reveal a circle of people who either ignored the signs or chose not to look too closely. And the disturbing timeline proves this wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was a multi-year pattern that nobody stopped. It's a gut punch that forces bigger questions. How did law enforcement miss this when her case was already public? Why didn't anyone in David's circle step up? And why did the entertainment industry, schools, and social platforms all overlook the warning signs? As the investigation moves forward, one truth is undeniable. This story is no longer just about David and Celeste. It's about a system that repeatedly looks the other way until it's too late. And it's a sobering call for all of us to recognize our responsibility in protecting vulnerable young people before tragedy strikes again. The story of David and Celeste is no longer just a celebrity headline. It's a haunting saga of power, secrecy, and a young life stolen far too soon. What began with whispers in Discord servers and quiet sightings in the Hollywood Hills unraveled into a timeline filled with grooming allegations, ignored red flags, and damning evidence that no one can explain away. Neighbors saw it, friends claimed ignorance, brands ran for cover. And yet, the most important truth remains: a teenager lost her future while the world looked the other way. Now David's career is hanging by a thread, his music silenced by scandal, and his name dragged through the mud on every platform imaginable. But beyond the downfall of one artist lies something even darker. The culture that enabled it, the systems that failed, and the silence of adults who should have stepped in long before tragedy struck. This isn't just about one case. It's about the bigger, scarier question. How many other Celestes are out there right now, hidden in plain sight, while predators use fame and influence as their cover? BarzBuzz will keep pulling back the curtain and exposing the truth, because this story isn't over, and neither is the fight to protect those who can't protect themselves. Stay tuned.